Hey, welcome to Fantasy Football with Corey and Kyle. In this video, we're talking about Jalen, Waddle, and Cooper Kupp and their disappointing 2024 fantasy football seasons.
And if we think they'll do it again in 2025.
Alrighty, before we get started, I want to invite you over to fantasyfootballadvice.com where you can catch all of our content from all of our content creators and join our social community to where you can gain extra access to us, all of our podcasts, extra content. You can connect with other fantasy football enthusiasts and talk ball 24/7. You don't have to worry about all that other crap you see on Facebook, all the politics, people's CrossFit workouts and pictures of their vacations and their kids that you give no craps about. So you don't have to worry about any of that. Come talk ball and hang out with us. All right, guys, the first player we're going to talk about tonight is Jalen Waddle, who had a pretty disappointing 2024 season. And unfortunately, I was touting this guy. I love Jalen Waddle. I really do. I think he's talented. I think he's in a high-power offense, but he let me down. What's up with that, Kyle?
Man, I'm with you. I love this guy as a talent, but there's just too much talent going on in Miami. When you're lining up across from Tyreek Hill, which he might not be next year. A little foreshadowing there.
We'll see.
But they did run the ball a whole lot more this year with Achane. But even with Tua missing, some games with that concussion, he was very disappointing even in the weeks when Tua was there.
Yep.
They just didn't have him involved in the offense enough. When you see a guy like Jonnu Smith putting up solid numbers all year and Jalen Waddle can't get in that rotation, that's concerning. I mean, the dude had under 100 targets on the season. That's crazy. Targets, not even receptions. That's targets. A pair of touchdowns the whole year. This guy is too talented to be that uninvolved.
I agree. You hit the nail on the head there with Jonnu Smith, who became the number 2 receiving option. Well, I say that. He probably became the number 1 receiving option in that offense because Tyreek Hill also had a pretty disappointing season. And so when you look at Jalen Waddle, and he had 1, 2, 3, 4 games all season where he scored in double-digit scoring in fantasy. That is absolutely horrible. And 3 of those came at the end of the season, weeks 12, 13, and 14. Before then, he got hurt and missed 3 complete games. So that's a whole nother problem that Jalen Waddle has going for him, is staying healthy. And he is in a bad habit of he'll come in and get hurt in the first quarter, which when I just talked about the games he got zeros on 3 games. But the first one, he played just enough, got 2 targets, got 0 points, and then got hurt. He seems to get hurt early in games. And it happens very often, which is absolutely horrible.
Yeah, I mean, that's T. Higgins syndrome, right? Go in, get 0 points, and get hurt. But, yeah, man, I don't know. I don't understand. Like you say, Jonnu Smith becoming, basically the number 1. You're right. Tyreek Hill was pretty disappointing this year too. But they just weren't pushing the ball down the field the same way that they did before. They went a lot more run heavy. And
very run heavy.
I definitely would like to see that improve. I don't know how you don't get this guy involved.
Yeah, well, again, there's a lot of mouths to feed. And for some reason, this running the ball and throwing it to Jonnu, their new toy there with Jonnu Smith, has kind of taken over. And it is annoying. It was annoying, especially for Tyreek Hill owners, when you drafted him, some people were picking him number 1 overall. He's definitely a first round pick, and then he didn't even turn out to be a wide receiver 1 at all. Barely wide receiver 2. So he didn't have a good season at all. So even more frustrating for them. For me, Waddle is now sitting at dang near the 4th wide receiver option or fourth receiving option, because it's almost like Achane is getting just as many targets as he is at this point. So you're talking targets.
Doing more with targets too.
I mean, you're talking about targets, target of 3 to 6 targets a game for Jalen Waddle, and you're looking at Achane and you're getting 3 to 8, 3 to 9 sometimes. So they're getting the same. Achane actually probably had more targets on the season. Now that I'm thinking, 87 for Achane, and Waddle had
58 catches.
Huh?
Did you say receptions or targets?
Targets. It is
83 targets for Waddle.
83 for Waddle and 87 for Achane. Achane also had 78 receptions to 58 for Waddle. So Achane is a better receiver than Waddle in this offense. So I am not loving Waddle in this offense. And I even feel like as of this moment, even if Tyreek Hill is gone from Miami next year, which I don't think is going to happen, if I'm being honest, but if he is, I still don't feel good about Waddle.
Well, yeah, the fortunate part this year was he already kind of went at a discount because he was hurt last year, and so his production was down. So luckily people weren't spending, a top 4 pick or a top 4 rounds pick on Waddle, but it's still it sabotaged your middle rounds if you took him. As far as next year goes, I think there is a slight sliver of hope with Tyreek wanting to get traded out of there. There's a chance he gets traded. If he gets traded this offseason.
From what I heard, he's already apologized and said he didn't mean it, and he was just frustrated at the time.
Sure, but I'm just saying, if it still happens, if he gets traded, then yeah, I like Waddle going into next year. He's going to be a wide receiver 1. If Tua stays healthy all year, that could be valuable.
Too risky.
He's still not in my top 15 receivers, even in that case, probably, because of the way they're running this offense. And I don't really believe in Tua that much as a quarterback, especially when he's literally, for the last 3 years, he's been one weekend at Bernie's, 1 hit away from retirement. And he's gotten hit 3 more times, and he's still not that dude's going to be a vegetable soon. So it's that in itself is scary when you're talking about Hill or Waddle or any of these guys that are catching passes from him. But yeah, if it's business as usual next year and Tyreek Hill's back, I don't see this improving much unless they, for some reason, get rid of Jonnu or he gets hurt. I think you need an injury or a trade for him to be worth drafting in fantasy next year.
Yeah, for me, there's too many red flags and too many risks. With his injury history, he doesn't hold up well. With Tua's injury history and scare moving forward, we saw what it was like when the backup came in. Tyler Huntley could not do much at all. And unless they improve that, then I'm not feeling good about it. The emergence of Jonnu Smith, the emergence of Achane in that offense and their receiving, for me, it's just not looking good. Like you said, situation could change in the offseason. We'll reevaluate then. So check back later in the offseason for an update on Waddle and what we're actually thinking about him.
I will say, as far as redraft goes next year, if it's business as usual, I'm definitely not going to draft him. But in Dynasty, if you can get him for cheap, there is still tremendous upside in his talent.
Yes.
And so if you can get him for a pretty cheap price and go buy low for someone who's panicking, that's a move I would look into, though.
Yep. Okay. With that being said, let's move on to our next disappointment of the year in Cooper Kupp, who was still being drafted fairly high. I mean, because he's still Cooper Kupp, right?
Yeah.
With Matt Stafford throwing to him. And I'm one of those where even if there's another good wide receiver, I'm not worried about the production of a good wide receiver. Sometimes two wide receivers can be a good thing in an offense because it can spread the field. So the emergence of Puka coming along did not scare me away from Cooper Kupp getting his targets too, right? And so I was willing to still take Cooper Kupp. And then he comes along, destroys it first game, 32 points, bam, tears it up. Told you so. This is going to be a fine season for him. And then he got hurt. And then it was like,
Again.
ooh, yeah, again. And misses quite a few games. Come back, fairly strong, doing pretty good, getting you there. And then we hit kind of like week 12, and he hit a wall. And then he just became irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you needed him the most. He had been helping you along there for, 5-6 weeks, and then all of a sudden disappeared on you, and he never came back.
No, he was done. Like I said, about 5 good games there in a row, rattled off. And then, yeah, he was just done. And what concerns me the most about Kupp, whether it's redraft or dynasty, is these injuries that keep piling up. And he's having to go see these specialists in other countries. And, he's, to me, he's kind of lumped in that group of CMC where it's like, man, that's a lot of soft tissue injuries adding up over the last few years. That worries me more than anything. But then when you see the emergence of Puka, because I remember going into this season, everybody's like, all right, Puka had a record-breaking year last year, a historical rookie year, right? Cooper Kupp was hurt a big, half of last year. So it's like, take it with a grain of salt, right?
Yep.
And then everybody's like, Cooper Kupp's still the number one. He's healthy going into the season. He's going to be the guy. Puka's not going to be as good. Well, we found out that was not the case. Because Kupp, while he was good, he got overtaken as the number one on that team.
Yeah.
Puka is the man now. And now they got Cooper Kupp on the trade block as a team.
Yep.
He might not even be there next year. And
okay, so let's play that fun game. Going on to next year then, if Cooper Kupp gets traded, let's put aside even the team he gets traded to because we have no idea, right? Yeah. But at his age and with the injuries he's had, the fall off in production, do we trust him even if he goes to another team, maybe even as a number one wide receiver opportunity? Do we still like him, or is he still risky and scary?
I think at his age, with his injury history, I think he's looking at maybe a 1-year contract, prove-it deal, Marquise Brown type of thing, to go to some team to be their number two. I don't think anybody at this point will want to try to rely on him to be their number one. He could be a really good number two if he lands in the right spot.
Yeah.
But for fantasy, it totally depends on where he lands. But I think wide receiver 2 is probably his ceiling.
No, I agree with that. And a lot of that is because he's probably not going to play in all the games in a season. I think that's kind of a given at this point too. You're not going to get a full season out of him. And so that's a scary thought, and what games are you going to get out of him?
Well, and he's not going to have the rapport and the trust with a new quarterback that he had with Stafford either.
Right.
So if Stafford was throwing it to him less and going to Puka, that's pretty telling.
It's concerning. It's definitely concerning. Yeah. I think Cooper Kupp's days of stardom are kind of behind him. Yeah, I think he's kind of done.
They're winding down for sure. Unless he just lands in a really sweet spot and falls really far in fantasy drafts, I'm not going to own Cooper Kupp ever again. That's just where he's at. If you've got him in Dynasty, I'm trying to sell him.
Yep.
If I can. I know it's not the best time to sell him on a down season, but the last 2 years with injuries and stuff, at some point you just got to cut your losses and
I think you're
take what
selling
you
him.
can get, I
I
think.
think you're selling him with the hype around a possible trade.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're selling him on because there's opportunity there, right? Like I've got T. Higgins. People are knocking on my door for T. Higgins because of a possibility he won't be in the same place next year. He could be
Free
a good
agent,
one
yeah.
somewhere. So there's a lot of excitement around that, and so there's a lot of talk about Cooper Kupp getting traded and stuff. That could get people excited and willing to pay a little bit more because they think he'll go to a better opportunity. And who knows, he might end up on a really trash situation. He could be the number 3 option somewhere. Who knows?
Well, because he could, if you try to sell him around the hype of a trade, okay, what if he gets a Stephon Diggs trade from Buffalo to Houston where they're loaded at wide receiver?
Mhm.
Like, because
Yeah.
and that's the problem. Because there's 2 strategies, right? Sell him now around the hype of a possible trade, or
Yep.
wait and see where he goes and then try to sell him and sell that. But if that's riskier because if he lands in a spot like that where they're
Yep.
already loaded and he's a number 3, then you screwed yourself. So
Yep, exactly. Okay, well, let's wrap this up with a fun would you rather. Would you rather next season have Cooper Kupp or Adam Thielen? Which old fart are you going with?
if discounting free agency or the draft as things sit right now, Thielen.
Yep. That's
But
where
there's
I'm
a
at,
lot that can happen in the offseason. So
yeah, I agree. But right now, I'm also leaning Thielen because somehow he is still keeping up the performance and he is still the safety blanket there in Carolina. So I'm
now,
with you
how
on
are
that.
you going to give me a would you rather with 2 white wide receivers in Black History Month
Two
story? How dare you?
2 old ones,
2 old white
Yeah.
guys.
So here I go. Anyways. All right, guys, before we sign off here, just one last invite to fantasyfootballadvice.com where you can go pro and join our private community where you can ingest all kinds of extra content and access to us and all of the other content creators on our platform. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us this time, and we'll see you next week.
See you next time.